In this video, we're going to discuss magic spells. Alright, so I've got a magic spell here with me. It's a fireball spell. However, it's important to understand that what I'm about to demonstrate really works for any kind of spell. There's a number of spells that are they come with max. They're there for examples, but they're not limits. They're not the only thing that can be done. You can make up any spell you want as long as you can pull off the effect, and I'll explain what I mean by that in a second. But for now, let's keep it simple. We've got the humble fireball spell. So I'm just going to pick this up. Now you'll notice that when I cursor over it, it says press E to collect fireball spell, T or right mouse button to target. So I press E, and that goes into my inventory screen. I've got an inventory screen set up, obviously, and I've also got a hotbar key. You don't need a hotbar key necessarily, but I thought it would be better for the visual, just so you can see that I've got that equipped now. And so now I'm going to target our first victim here. So if I press the right mouse button, you can see that I'm targeting that victim. And if I press the 1 key, then we get our fireball effect. Pretty cool. Right? And so I've got enough mana for another fireball, so I'm just going to show you that one more time. I press either right mouse or T, doesn't really matter, same thing. And press 1, fireball. There we go. So let me show you how all of that works. There's a lot of moving parts here, but we'll go over it all. All right, so let's start with the mana stuff, because you're going to need mana in order to cast a spell. We'll navigate to our in-game HUD screen. You can see I've set up a little panel there for my inventory hotkeys. And I've also set up a couple of user-defined globals. So the first one is called My Mana Max. That's just to show that that's the maximum amount of mana that I can have. It's a pre-built user global that you can just reference. And then I've got another one here called My Mana. Again, comes with max. You don't have to make it. It's just there. So you can use it. And so this is just how much of that do I have currently. And you could see when I was explaining the setup of the video that the mana was rising. I did set up a potion for myself just in case it wasn't ready, but I didn't end up needing it. So you have to have My Mana initiated, right? Because otherwise it doesn't really exist until you initiate it, and you initiate it by just having it on the screen. All right, so now let's talk about the particles and the spell itself. So you can see I've got two particle effects here. This one is just one that I found in the particle editor called, gosh, I forget what it was called. Oh, well, I called it Fire Swirl. There's that, and then you've got this one, which is the Fire Tornado. So between the two, they make up the full effect. You don't necessarily have to use two, but I thought they looked really cool together. And here's the spell itself. So you can see right away that it's a collectible object. We've got our prompt text here. I just left that as default. You have the usage text, which is what it says when you actually you use the spell. The pickup range, of course, is how close you have to be in order to pick up the spell. The user global that it's going to affect. Again, all of this was just default. I didn't have to enter any of this. So I just used My Mana. Now, if you have some other global that you wanted to use instead, you can definitely do that. The mana cost, so you're still going to need mana in order to cast the spell. But again, mana is like it says mana cost, but try not to read too much into that. I could just as easily make that mojo cost, right? So it doesn't really, it's just whatever you're using essentially. The cost, the global cost. I mean, how else do you phrase that, right? Then you have the cast damage. So I did 500 hit points. That was more than enough to kill the zombie. The cast radius, I kept it small so that I didn't kill both of them at once, but theoretically I could have. I could have added more to that radius and hit 2 in one shot. So it's up to you. Just kind of get a feel for that. But 5 is pretty small as far as the radius is concerned. The player level is kind of a player lock. So let's suppose you didn't want a level 1 player to be able to cast a fireball spell. You want that's a level 10 player spell. Then you could set that to a level gate here so that they can only use it when they're appropriate level. And then this part, I think, is what was confusing some folks, and that's the particle name. So going back to the particles, here's spell particle 1, and here's spell particle 2. Obviously, that's what I named them, and then they're referenced here, spell particle 1 and 2. Now, you could call it whatever you want to, whatever makes sense. It's just these were the placeholder names that were there. They were as good as anything, I guess, so I went with it and just made sure that my particle is named after those references so that it knows which particles to use. Now, if I had a second spell, let's say I had, I don't know, a poison spell, right? And I had a poison particle, then I'd have to call it something different, like particle 3 or something like that. And that's when you might want to use more descriptive names if you're having multiple spells. Item highlight. This is kind of like what you see on a lot of pickup items where you can choose for it to highlight around the object or the shape of the object. And that's just for like low light situations where you think the player might accidentally miss something. Like that potion is really hard to see, but if I had a highlight, it would be easier to see. That's a good example of that. And then you have, of course, the sounds. Now, the first sound is for when it's successful, and the second sound is for if it were to fail. So, for instance, if you didn't have enough mana and you tried to cast a spell, then maybe it should fizzle or something like that. Maybe you can have a sound effect for that. But that's it. That is magic spells and max. And like I said, it could really be any magic spell. You'll find that there's a number of them. Like if you were to look for the word spell, you'll find like there's some presets here that you could use, but the sky's the limit, right? If you want a mojo spell, whatever it is that you want, you can make it happen as long as you can make the effects correct, right? Because really what it comes down to at the end of the day, every spell is just the particles. It's the visual and it's the audio experience. Otherwise, they're literally the same thing. But that's it. That's magic spells explained. If you enjoyed the video, if you learned anything new, please be sure to click the like button down below. I really appreciate every single one of you that does. If you're new here or if you just haven't subscribed yet, would love to have you stick around. And lastly, if you'd like a notification for whenever new videos are posted, just click the bell icon. That'll let you know when a new video is ready. Thanks so much for watching all the way through. I always appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now. Hey, don't forget there's a written guide for every behavior, including ones I haven't yet covered on this channel. And if you want to learn some more, why don't you check out this video next.